President Donald Trump began his term by taking a series of sweeping immigration executive actions that included declaring a national emergency at the U.S. southern border, immediately ending use of a border app called CPB-1 that had allowed migrants to legally enter the United States, and kicking off the process to end birthright citizenship, which is expected to tee up a legal fight. Trump also made a striking personnel move as senior leadership at the Justice Department's agency overseeing the nation's immigration courts were removed from service on Monday evening. The Executive Office for Immigration Review oversees the U.S. immigration court system, where immigration judges decide if immigrants can remain in the U.S. or be deported. The removals, which targeted career public servants who together have served in the agency for several years, raised questions about whether they were permitted under rules dictated by the Office of Personnel Management. And they illustrated the Trump administration's push to install officials who are aligned with his policy vision. The executive actions are the culmination of multiple campaign pledges and the resurfacing of policy ideas that didn't come to fruition during Trump's first term. Trump aides have signalled that they will be followed within days by a series of immigration enforcement sweeps targeting criminals, though they haven't ruled out that others could be apprehended too. The shutdown of CPB-1 on Monday closed a key pathway for people looking to come into the US. Homeland Security Department officials have cited the app as helping drive down migrant crossings by providing an orderly way to apply to the United States. With that now gone and asylum restrictions in place, the border is effectively shut down to asylum seekers, an extraordinary move. For News Central, I'm Afua Hagan.
And joining us now is our international correspondent Afua Hagan. She joins us live, as well as Professor Mukesh Kapila. Is an author and senior humanitarian who joins us live from Switzerland. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. But let me start with you, Afua. Along with immigration, tell us about some of the other executive orders that Trump have now signed.
Yeah, a whole raft of executive orders, Judith, that were signed Monday evening. The January 6th rioters, 1,500 of them have been pardoned by Trump. The action also cut short some sentences for 14 members of far-right groups, including the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. We saw the US has been withdrawn from the Paris climate change agreements. Those immigration measures, like I said, could result in some raids being conducted by members of the immigration enforcement services across America into today and tomorrow. If we look at free speech, Trump has gone to restore freedom of speech and preventing censorship of free speech. The death penalty was another one that was in amongst those executive orders. He wants to take all necessary and lawful action to ensure that states have enough lethal injection drugs to carry out executions. And Trump also said in that executive order that politicians and judges who oppose capital punishment have defied and subverted the laws of our country. There was that executive order to do with TikTok to keep it operating for another 75 days whilst a solution over ownership is found. Trump is keen on 50% American ownership as well. And the WHO, Trump has pulled the US out of the World Health Organization as well, saying that it has donated far too much money to the WHO and isn't getting the benefits. That's just some of the executive orders that were signed yesterday.
Professor, I have to come to you about, Trump's tough stance on immigration. How could his policies affect international perceptions of the U.S. as a destination for immigrants and even global talent?
I think this all depends on how the policy is applied at all parts of the spectrum of migration. Now, most of the migrants that he's tackling in his southern war issue with Mexico, the border crossing and the emergency there, are about poor people, people looking for a better economic life in the U.S., and very few of them are actually coming out of political oppression, though some no doubt are. Many people are traveling across the world to get to Mexico from where to go into the United States because it's seen as an easy touch to get in there. Now, when it comes to global talent, in terms of science and technology, then I think there's a debate going on in the U.S. administration. But with the new friends, his new buddies in the technology community, which have helped him propel him into power, I think global talent, really, which the U.S. Industry needs, may not be so affected if it pursues U.S. economic interests.
And Afua, what has been the reaction to the fanatic start to Trump's presidency so far?
Yeah, and a frenetic start indeed. We've had quite a lot of reaction from around the world, actually, to the start to the presidency, which has been very busy. So Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has responded to Trump's renewed threat about tariffs. Now, he had promised that would come in, and he's now saying that February 1st, we could see tariffs against Mexico and Canada of 25%. So Justin Trudeau has said Canadian energy powers American manufacturing, homes and businesses, and Canada has all the resources to do that. That's steel, aluminium and energy, and he wants to work with America in this new golden age. Now, the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has said that the people of Mexico can be sure that we'll always defend our sovereignty and our independence. And she also went on to say it's important to have a cool head. That's amongst those immigration issues and moves to designate some Mexican drug gangs as international terrorists. Now, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who was actually at the inauguration yesterday, she said that Italy will always be committed to consolidating the dialogue between the US and Europe as an essential pillar of stability and growth for our communities. Now, we have had some reaction from families whose relatives died during that Capitol 6 riot. So this is a family of police officer Brian Sicknick, who died after responding to the January 6th riots. They released a statement about Donald Trump's decision to pardon virtually all of those rioters. They refer to the pardons as the undoing of justice that was previously determined by the court's sentencing of their relatives' assailants, and he said it's their hope that the truth of what happened that tragic day will survive, irrespective of partisan political objectives. Quite a lot of reaction to lots of different parts of the last 24 hours of Trump's presidency.
I mean, and Professor, talking about Trump, and he has consistently advocated for a more America-first foreign policy. It begs to ask the question: was America never first? But most importantly, how might this approach alter U.S.-Africa diplomatic and economic ties geopolitically, particularly for countries seeking greater engagement with the U.S.?
Look, to start, let's be honest. What President Trump is doing is what many other countries are also doing. I live in Europe, and I think there is very much a European Union first policy in effect on migration, on economy, and on many things, even if they don't call it a EU first policy. So Trump is a bit more aggressive about it, but I think the more transactionalist approach is a part of modern foreign policy. Now, when it comes to Africa-US relations, I think African nations have to look to their own interests, and they will have to relate to the United States in a way that the United States finds they can do a deal together. So I think, for example, on the aid side, I can't see the Trump administration providing more assistance unless it suits American interests. On the business side, there are possibilities, but I think Trump is very good at dividing and ruling also. So it will be a challenge to African foreign policy, especially collective foreign policy, in the African Union in particular as to whether they approach the US, the new US, bilaterally or stand together collectively. And I think the Africans are themselves quite divided on this issue. So I'm afraid there are turbulent times ahead.
Turbulent times indeed. Afua, and lastly for you, today is Trump's first day in office. What more should we expect? What more should the world expect preemptively?
Well, it's been actually quite a busy first day in office for Donald Trump, as well as signing those executive orders and the feedback from that. You did have the national commemoration service, a Thanksgiving service that took place this morning at Washington Cathedral. It was supposed to be about unification, he said. It was an interfaith prayer service, but the bishop there, the Bishop of Washington, delivered quite a strong message with a plea to Donald Trump regarding the LGBTQ plus community and immigrants, saying that millions of people have put their trust in them and he has to have mercy upon people in the country who are scared. Trump was quite stony-faced while that sermon was being delivered, and at the end, when a reporter asked him how he found the prayer service, he said they could have done better. Marco Rubio has been sworn in as Secretary of State. J.D. Vance was presiding over that. Yes, and he was going to possibly sign more executive orders later on today as well. What we haven't heard from him is any reaction towards Elon Musk yesterday giving that Nazi salute at one of Trump's rallies, at one of the celebrations that he had. Elon Musk himself has responded and said that it's boring that people are trying to compare him to Nazis, to this Nazi salute, and they should find another way to try and bring him down. But no response from Trump there on that one at all.
Well, as always, it's to be expected. Afua, many thanks for doing this with us. Afua Hagan, our international correspondent, as well as Professor Kapish. I want to say thank you as well for both of you for just taking our time to join us today.